Coming up on today's wrestling news, WWE Fans Rebel during Monday Night Raw.
We'll tell you why R-Truth and Carlito specifically were chosen for their release.
We'll also tell you what's going on with The Miz.
And Valhalla is also gone from WWE.
I'm Adam Wilborn.
I'm Michael Hamflett.
And this is the news. So, of course, in the last few days, everyone has been talking about WWE seeing R-Truth the end of his contract and then allowing him to leave after what? 17 years straight with the company, something like that. And understandably, there's a big backlash about this. All the wrestlers are devastated he's not going to be in the locker room anymore. Loads of speculation about how that's going to affect locker room morale. And fans aren't happy about it either. So much so that they actually rebelled a little bit during Monday Night Raw with a smattering of "We Want Truth" chants going on during the triple threat match to determine the final Money in the Bank qualifier for the women's match featuring Liv Morgan, Ivy Nile, and the sensational Stephanie Vaquer. And during that tag match between the War Raiders and the Judgment Day, represented by Finn Balor and JD McDonough, you could hear definitely, and it's been tweeted about it subsequently, and there's even a hashtag going around, not quite as trending as you know, cancel WWE Network was back in the day, or the Cody thing, which was obviously one of the most famous instances of fan rebellion forcing the company to make a change. But yes, fans want truth, Michael Hamflett.
Yeah, it would be, I think you make the point there, it would be disingenuous to compare this to the Cody Rhodes one. I was thinking also of like the Yes Movement, or even something like Reset Day, where there's such a loud and vocal response to something that WWE are not giving you, that the fans feel like the only way to get it is to try and claim it through hijacking or whatever. It's all fun and games, all this sort of stuff. What I will say is that if you look at the smattering of chants and some of the signs that people have taken, for now at least, there is a significant emotional response to the R-Truth release. We talked about this in depth on the Raw preview podcast, which you can still get wherever you get your podcasts, on our YouTube channel or Spotify, Apple Podcasts, etc. But like, to echo kind of like some of our thoughts from the news yesterday that we did on R-Truth release, whilst I don't necessarily think that this will stick, or whilst these protests I don't necessarily believe will even be kicking around by sort of next week's Raw, I do feel that in the wider picture of 2025, the story in wrestling, this could be one of those 1,000 cuts that they talk about. When they say death by 1,000, and by the kind of pendulum swinging in terms of public sort of sentiment back in maybe AEW's favour, or at least away from WWE. This feels more like one of them. Maybe not this kind of earthquake outside of WWE's walls, but one where just people remember and people feel a little bit aggrieved and feel like they've lost one of their favourites. You know, we talked a lot about the wrestlers who felt it. That I completely get.
Yeah.
That's a colleague who has been with the majority of them for all of their time within the company. You know, he's one of the long-standing guys. So if you've come in, R-Truth was already there. So for you to still be there and him not will feel weird and will feel strange. We saw, I think it was Rhea Ripley on TikTok yesterday afternoon. She's got that enormous TikTok following. She was wearing an R-Truth t-shirt. There will be further shows of solidarity with R-Truth. Their friend, I have no doubt.
Yeah.
But I feel like it's more about what this might do long term in a smaller way than necessarily some sort of big sweeping Raw getting hijacked by all night long R-Truth chants.
And it's also going to be interesting. You kind of got to try and pick your spots with these sort of things, because I noticed the "We Want Truth" chant during the women's triple threat, and I was like, "Come on, guys! It's a really good triple threat." Ivy Nile, I thought, held her own in there, and obviously
it passed, didn't it, as well? Because the match was good.
Yeah, Liv Morgan and Stephanie Vaquer, just absolutely brilliant. It made more sense, obviously, to have it involved in the match involving the Judgment Day. We sort of debated as well on the podcast yesterday whether or not they were going to feature R-Truth or reference R-Truth, because he's not just completely cut and gone from, you know, Sunday or whatever. I'm fairly certain they're saying, look, a bit like Carlito, when your contract gets to its natural conclusion, thanks very much, but we won't be renewing it. It is going to be really interesting to see going forward how they deal with it, including the Judgment Day. Like, Carlito was not there in like the clubhouse or whatever last night, and he's kind of a lesser consideration with regards to this, but it particularly involved in sort of morale of the WWE locker room. Will be interesting to see if they allow him to have some final matches in front of people, or whether it's just like, right, we know you're leaving the end of the contract, so thanks very much, but you can just kind of hang around catering. Because I feel like he merits a send-off, and fans will want to see him one last time, no doubt.
Yeah, it is very difficult. It's a tough circle to square, that one, even if to the point
obviously he's on SmackDown, I should say, by the way.
Yeah. Even if because if he works television, there will be this sort of, you inadvertently create like a push and pull where it feels like maybe there's a response to the criticism. All right, here's your R-Truth, but then he's still going, and it's like, well, does that create a bigger problem down the line when you've had this one last go of it, and then he's still getting released? Don't think this changed anything. Likewise, if he works, say, dark matches, like as if like he gets to beat the house show stuff that they do at the end of TV tapings, is that then going to get shared on people's phones and create this optimism that maybe he's going to get, it's like kept on. And who knows what the future holds. Maybe he will get kept on. Maybe he'll get brought back. I have my suspicions that wonder if this is one of the things where they cut a contract now and then they renegotiate a new one down the line and get to present themselves as the heroes who are bringing a guy back probably on 10 cents on the dollar compared to what he's making today. Who knows? Anyway.
They've got rid of his Ron Cena t-shirt, haven't they?
Indeed they have, which was like top of the merch charts, I think, last week. So already they're thinking more about like income in different ways than maybe we would. Maybe I'm just a cynic, who knows, but maybe you should be more cynical too, because let's talk a little bit about why it was that R-Truth and Carlito were released specifically. There was all sorts of, it depends what social media bubble you're in, but there was a lot of discussion over the weekend that the evil TKO are at the root cause of this. It's always budget cuts, it's always money trying to be saved.
Not Triple H's fault, it's TKO saying, get rid of R-Truth and Carlito.
Well, I got some news to Will. It's Triple H's fault.
What?
Yeah. And look, this is how you should kind of, from my point of view, let me editorialise, this is how you should view this news. These people are not your friend. It's okay to like the game Triple H as a booker, but you can also appreciate that he's a guy. One of the bean counters that Road Dogg said he wasn't a big fan of, which may be something to do with why his tweet got deleted. Anyway, to the real story rather than my baseless speculation. We're here to aggregate, not to speculate. And we can aggregate a story that came through from Dave Meltzer himself, speaking on Wrestling Observer Radio. And he said, in relation to the ending of Carlito and R-Truth's contracts, quote, their numbers. They're looking at the numbers, they're looking at how many do we have to cut, or how much money do we have to cut. And those were the picks. Those were Levesque picks, and that's what it is. I don't think they lose anything by losing Carlito. R-Truth is really funny. That's the words of
Meltzer, that
the esteemed Dave Meltzer. But yes, choices made by Triple H. Ultimately, these sort of things do not pass by his desk. Yes, they may start with a spreadsheet. Yes, they may start with whether it be Nick Khan or faceless executives saying, "No, we need X million saved this week." Well, this week, yep. Well, that's how this works. Yeah. Like the machine keeps on rolling.
And I know they're making ridiculous amounts of money, but they can always make more.
That's all they're thinking about. The shareholders, the stockholders, there's various people to placate. And they will never, ever, ever care about the talent or the people, or indeed any of our feelings about those people. And it's worth remembering that, unfortunately, when you want to make your kind of, for me, posts about like the supposedly babyface version of the massive billionaire-backed organisation you enjoy. That's the kind of reality of how it all goes.
Yeah, it's Carlito's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I love Carlito. I think he's been a very entertaining member of the Judgment Day. But, I think Dave's right. I think it's not a great loss in terms of, and, Carlito's a lovely guy. Met him at Sweet Chin Disco, I should mention. And more Sweet Chin Disco dates, if you want to check them out on their social medias, coming your way in August. Me and Mark Henry back on the road, baby. But
I want to go all.
I'm going off on a tangent. Well, there may be a few more to be announced, but I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that. Anyway, Carlito, look, he's had a very good time, hasn't he? Let's be perfectly honest.
Good run.
Playing 2K and doing the occasional run-in on Monday Night Raw. Yes, he's had some matches and, he's never embarrassed himself in there. But, he's not a great loss in-ring, I think it's fair to say, in terms of the weekly product. But, very entertaining character, as is R-Truth. R-Truth's far more interesting one, I think. And now you've started the ball rolling in my head, and once that starts, it can't really stop, to be honest. The conspiracy theory of them going, let's say we're releasing R-Truth. Because, I doubt he's on, a Cody Rhodes salary, but I've no doubt that it's gone up incrementally up over the years.
I think they've done well. Yeah.
Yes, they probably could do well to cut that money or get that money back by cutting him from the roster. But it is a balance of we still do take into account, they are the listening company, we do take into account fan reaction and what have you. So whether or not now they go, what if we just release 3 more people from NXT instead of R-Truth? Not to be conspiratorial, but there's a bit of me that's starting to think that, and I wonder if they're going to keep an eye on this. I'm not saying that get out there with your signs and your placards and we'll do what we did with Cody at WrestleMania 40 quite, but it is going to be really interesting. But it is at the end of the day, they said we need to save X amount of thousands of dollars, and the easiest one was he plays 2K and does some run-ins on Raw, and R-Truth's like a comedy guy, but he's never going to be fighting for a title going forward.
Something on that as well. You mentioned about 3 NXT people could disappear as a result of that.
I don't want that to happen, obviously.
Ask yourself this, right? And this is not to sort of justify anybody getting the contract cuts, although again, I feel like it's worth mentioning that the idea that wrestlers reach the end of their paid agreement and then that agreement ends is kind of what we were looking for all along.
Yeah.
It's something that AEW have really pushed forward with.
WWE have made that change within wrestling.
They've made that change within WWE.
That was just because they're the good guys. I'm joking. Come on.
What was I going to say? That was it. There is a reality check that I think a lot of people need to experience at various points in their fandom and various points in their time as a fan. And this is not me preaching to you. If R-Truth is your absolute favourite wrestler, I would feel aggrieved and feel the same if my favourite wrestler just got released. But when you mention NXT people, if you are really deep in the weeds with WWE, there are probably a bunch of people that you are really excited about to see make the jump from NXT to the WWE main roster. The roster of late is actually feeling somewhat bloated. I've been fairly vocal about this. I'm not massively in support of a bunch of new signings. I think you have so many arms developmentally at the moment.
Yeah.
That if you're going to bring some of those up, the probably last thing you need is
space made. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a brutal game, and the wrestlers ultimately kind of know that when they're entering into play, and everyone obviously has a worth and a value, and it's not nice to talk about it in these terms. But if you have, say, 6 favourites that you're desperate to see get spots, those spots have to come from somewhere. And yeah, Carlito and Truth might have been light relief more than these heavily focused upon people on the show. But we're talking about Saturday night's main event match that just happened recently. Yeah. We're talking about multi-man tags that take place with the Judgment Day. Those people that you love might be the ones that come and occupy those spots in those matches. And then you might not be so heartbroken that your prior favourites have gone. There is a cycle to these things, and I know it sounds ugly to talk about these things sometimes, but this is not... R-Truth seeing through the end of his contract is not somebody getting released in the middle of the pandemic. No. And I think there are different discussions to be had about the nature of particular releases.
What I will say, and this is me preaching you and telling you how you should think, is you should not be tweeting, I'm gutted that R-Truth's been released. It should have been this person.
Yeah.
Because wrestlers are vain people, they'll search for their own names, and they don't need to read stuff like that. No. I'm sure privately, myself and Hamlet would say, I'd rather R-Truth stayed and X person got released and said, but just don't put it out there.
Everyone's got
because you can get a few likes on it, but hey, don't hurt people's feelings. Come on.
This guy. Yeah. He's all heart.
Heart. God, I miss him on Wagner so much.
See? We all miss people.
Yeah. Anyway, let's talk about...
Speaking of Come Tuesday, join us later on for the NXT preview, wherever you get your podcasts.
Oh, yeah.
Not
all the fallout of... I just bloody love NXT so much.
Huge
JC Jane, the new Women's World Champion. But let's talk about The Miz, because... There's been a speculation online and the usual bollocks of Sean Ross Sapp says he's quit, and Sean Ross Sapp has to go. I didn't say that. You just put my name to it, basically, or Wrestle Votes, or
because some websites put Sean Ross Sapp's name to articles at least. Because there's plenty that don't. Check out Sean Ross Sapp's tweet for a long discussion on a certain website that does not link back to his stories and others.
I didn't see this.
I applaud Sean Ross Sapp for getting that out there. Go for it, mate.
Oh, I like this.
When you're going to aggregate honestly.
Yeah. If you're going to report a journalist like Sean Ross Sapp or Dave Meltzer or me, make sure you attribute.
Source him appropriately.
You sit there and you say, no one knew CM Punk was going to come back. Well, one person did. One person didn't say it and put his reputation on the line.
There's one pretty substantial website at the moment that aggregates news that Sean Ross Sapp has gone in two-footed on because they're aggregating it I like my burgers with no sources. So do better.
Anyway, The Miz. A load of people speculating that he's going to quit the company and go to Hollywood or whatever it may be, or he's just in a huff with WWE, maybe because R-Truth's been released or whatever, because he has unfollowed WWE and removed all mentions of them from social media, which obviously naturally leads people to think, he's gone.
Yeah.
Well, he's kind of prominently featured on SmackDown right now. He's in a tag team with, or at least mentoring somewhat, Carmelo Hayes. Mm-hmm. He literally was heavily involved in a Money in the Bank qualifier on Friday night. But Vital Select have done some research about this because they're good people and do this sort of thing. Haven't heard anything about being informed his contract will not be renewed even. But maybe this is all part of a storyline because he's in a bit of a huff with Mello, basically, because Mello was saying, I am him. After The Miz was like, we're going to be Mr. Money in the Bank. Well, I'm going to be Mr. Money in the Bank. And it's like, but I gave up my spot. But I've still done all the work to get here, says Mello. He didn't get there in the end. And I'll be honest, The Miz has taken week after week of being squished against the barricade by Jacob Fatu, or having his head kicked off his shoulders by Aleister Black. He's having a rough time of it. I sense he's on the road to betraying / splitting up Miz and Mello, despite they are our team.
Yeah, loved him.
But
Bought him Dre after he won the Andre.
it's a lot of money. It costs a lot of money.
Like that.
Yeah.
Picture. Classy stuff.
But what do you make of all this?
Well, counterpoint to what you're saying. Like, is there smoke to this fire?
Maybe.
Like, the fact that he's being booked to potentially end a current on-screen partnership, the fact that he's doing so on a losing streak.
Yeah.
Like, these are ways in which people sometimes see out their time as a TV character. R-Truth is as good example as anybody, that there's no such thing as a lifer, that you never say never and all this kind of thing.
Get rid of a big contract. I sense Miz is probably on one.
You know, like we've just talked about how like the idea of like they'll just sometimes it feels like they just filter by numbers and then like assess that person's value versus what they're like. I think I'm a kind of a Miz truther or a Miz lifer, however you want to be kind about it. Like,
You were there for his cash in?
I was indeed there for his cash in, yeah.
The first one, I should say.
Yeah, the good one. Nobody was there for his cash in unless you're watching on a Thunderdome screen. But yeah, it's a funny one. I would be disappointed for the end of a job of a multi-millionaire who
Multiple-time world champion.
who has like achieved literally everything there is to achieve in WWE and then gets to go on and live the remainder of his days comfortable and presumably
With Maurice!
healthy with his wonderful family. Yes.
Sorry, yeah.
So it'll be one of those things where it's like, you know, you don't need to cry for everybody if they're going to be all right without your tears. I don't know. Like, I asked me last week and I go, well, yeah, surely not the Miz. But then I would have said R-Truth is even less likely.
Yeah.
Look, here's the thing. We need to be asking the big questions here. Like, you're the OTJ. Like, I'm a shameless aggregator. Let's ask the questions that matters. You let us know in the comments section. Who would you book them as against in All Elite Wrestling? Because, like, those become the chats.
I think Michael Sidgwick's head would explode.
The day that old Mike Mizanen's out the door, like the day that he's walking in the Forbidden One, that's what I'm saying.
What the hell is Michael Mizanin doing here?
In the Dynamite Zone. Like, that's what I want to see.
I do kind of want to see that now, you said that. But I'm never going to campaign for anyone to be released, obviously, as we often say. But, look, all this talk of, you know, Carlito, less so Carlito, but R-Truth and The Miz, and other names that we've seen recently being getting rid of, like, as football, soccer fans, you know, we talk about sometimes football teams, you know, he's the club captain, you can't get rid of him. And some managers, in this scenario, I suppose Triple H is the manager, go, no, I don't care how much tenure you've got at the club, I don't care if you're Roy Keane or, I don't know, the legendary striker of a team. You're getting on a bit, and there's all this great young talent we want to bring through. It's the same, really. You know, your name, your reputation can only take you so far, and money talks, and something walks.
Talent walks. Talent walks the way you do. I've got something.
Go on.
Open a Collision, open a Dynamite. Take your pick.
Dynamite.
Hey, ho ho. TV, Mizan, and go. Hey, ho ho. TV, Mizan, and go. Because obviously it can't be Mr. Morrison anymore.
No.
So Johnny TV and Mike Mizanin win the belts, win the tag belts. Is that anything?
Awesome Truth invading AEW.
Oh my God, this is going down a path that nobody wants to see. So let's instead move on to one more release. It's all the stories this week, it seems. And again, that's why I think there might be smoke in this fire, who knows. But Valhalla is the latest to confirm via her social media that she will be seeing out her contract and then will be done with WWE. She posted a long post to socials yesterday. I'll go through a little bit of it, like it can be seen online. Quote, I come to you with tears in my eyes because our time has come to a sudden end. WWE informed me yesterday, so that would have been Saturday or Sunday, that they are letting my contract expire. To be completely honest, my ego can't help but be damaged. You always assume that when you end a lifelong career there is going to be a grand exit. But here I am using a notes app on my phone, typing up a goodbye letter to an entity that will forget I was even there. I truly take no offence to this. My career as it was getting usurped by my vocation, and it's all on a divine timeline that I trust deeply. She goes on to talk about how she'll miss the fans, and obviously she missed getting to work with her husband. She's referring there, of course, to like the self-contained like farm that she lives on. They like sort of rear their own animals and eat what they grow and all that kind of stuff. And she's recently had obviously a second child. That was part of like the reason for like a prior extended absence. And she rounds out the message saying, it will share only the parts of me that I wish, as refers to her like a public presence now, and none of that will be wrestling. I'm more of a clean break kind of girl, and the other calls to me will be taking my full attention. With all my love, Sarah. Yes, her and Eric from the Viking Raiders had a second child. She was last on television in early 2024, so it's been quite a extended break for her when she was obviously the manager figure of the Viking Raiders. They were together. Viking Raiders still kicking around on Raw in the tag division, but Valhalla will no longer be a part of that.
Yeah, they lost that sort of Valhalla-esque imagery a while back.
Yeah. And it's not the first time she's parted ways with the company as well. Again, different times, different needs. She was part of the 2020 pandemic releases, but then was brought back as part of this act. But yeah, they're going to see through the end of the deal, and that's going to be that.
Yeah, I can relate to her thinking that, whenever you leave a job, you kind of want a grand exit.
Yeah.
It doesn't always work like that, and you're not in charge of it. But it is nice to hear that she's just moving on with her life. It isn't, it's a shame whenever you see those people either bitter or begging for a job or whatever.
It's a big adjustment, isn't it?
Yeah, and it is. It must be a strange thing to go from, even if you're just hanging around in catering, being involved in the biggest wrestling company in the world, and then just being like, what do I do on Monday nights now, or whatever it may be?
A TV star?
Without question. But I think it's great to hear her just kind of refocusing on her life and her family and what have you. And best luck to her and to Eric continuing their life outside of wrestling.
But just one last thing while I remember, because I watched some of it yesterday and I thought, I want to plug this and put it over. Speaking of released talents and people moving on to the next things, highest recommendation to go and check out Ariel Helwani's sit down with Cora Jade. I've watched basically massive chunks of it through people that have shared elements of it online.
I saw people sharing this.
The artist formerly known as Cora Jade, I should say. Obviously talking about what she's going to do next and her various return to wrestling, but also speaking in quite a lot of detail about some of the setbacks and health issues she faced in NXT that certainly reframes the timeline of it, and it's her kind of claiming back a bit of her own narrative. The stuff you can talk about maybe when you're out of WWE's walls rather than within them. Nothing salacious or anything like that, but there's I don't know, it's worth checking out. It kind of adds a lot more context to her time within NXT, and again, sort of like the life of a wrestler that maybe you don't always see. Helwani sometimes knows how to kind of get those extra details out of people, so yeah, worth checking out.
Before you check that out though, check this out right here. I've no idea what it is, but I'm sure it's great. Bye.
See you later.